Constitutional Court has declared the controversial AARTO Act valid. Let's go to the head of legal affairs now at AARTO, Stefanie Fick, for more on this ruling. Stefanie, of course, news just in that, in fact, you did not win the appeal or the appeal case rather. So how do you feel right now, and what will your next steps be?
Obviously, we're disappointed. I mean, we wouldn't have started this fight if we were convinced about our arguments. And we won in the High Court and we lost in the Constitutional Court. But you know what? That's the beauty of, our constitutional democracy, and that we have absolute respect for what the Constitution has ruled. And they've ruled that AARTO is constitutional and valid. However, that's not sort of the end of the fight. AARTO, right from the start, although it said that it wants to, curb road deaths and create better driving, that is not going to be achieved by AARTO. AARTO is still, we are very concerned that AARTO is an administrative nightmare. So I think our next chapter is to try and convince government that although we are not against legislation per se, there needs to be buy-in. In other words, people need, civil obedience because they understand the legislation. And then administratively, it should not be as cumbersome as, for example, AARTO. There's going to be an enormous amount of problems. But let's see. I think at the end, the purpose is to create better road legislation so that we can curb the road deaths. AARTO is not going to help with drunk driving and, just the sheer carnage that's on our roads.
Now, Stefanie, you did now mention that you think that it is administratively very complicated, the AARTO Act. But let's talk about some of the other concerns that you also do have with this Act. I think one of the biggest ones that you mentioned previously is, of course, that national government could infringe or impact, rather, on the collection of revenue by the local government. Is this still what you firmly believe in?
Well, we do, and I think if you just consider the fact that if infringement notices are issued, 50% of that goes to RTIA, and that is taken away. That revenue collection is then, in other words, a local government will only get 50% of the fine. So in our court case, for example, the City of Cape Town joined us. But because the Concord has decided that, Parliament was legislatively competent to do this, and there's no usurpation of the executive powers of municipalities, this is now the legislation we sit with. But it will, unfortunately, I think, have a financial impact on municipalities. Remember, AARTO currently is only they only use AARTO in Tshwane and in Joburg. But when the Amendment Act is finally in operation, it will be nationwide. So there's some of the smaller municipalities that must get ready for losing at least half their income from fines.
All right. And you did mention that the fight isn't over. Can you just maybe elaborate on that and what AARTO's next steps will be?
So the fight is no longer a legal one. We have now, the Concord has said that legally we don't have an avenue anymore. But now we need to think about the practical problem. So the impact this will have on motorists. And it's not about, being difficult or whatever. It is about finding the best solution in order to, get to the objective of better road users. So, firstly, road users must be mindful of the fact that, firstly, they need to receive the infringement notices. Then there's a whole process that needs to follow. And a motorist needs to become aware of that process and their rights in that process. And then, of course, the demerit point system, that people should understand that, if there's enforcement orders and demerit points, that they may lose their license. Now, if you are guilty, of course, I hope that everybody that receives a fine, whether through AARTO or any other system, that you will pay your fines and make sure that you don't do that again. The problem is that, for example, because of NATIS, that is also a problem, that we have duplications, that you may get a ticket that does not belong to you, or that you never receive your infringement notices because it was never delivered to you, or that, an enforcement order is created, after RTA, for example, did not follow their procedures. And that because of this cumbersomeness of the AARTO Act, is that there might be a whole lot of practical problems. And how do we solve that for motorists? So that is the next step. How do we assist?
The department, however, they do say that, that pilot project that they did launch a while back, the AARTO pilot project, they say it was a success. Of course, the AA says it definitely wasn't. What's your take on that?
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. I mean, AARTO was implemented in 1998. From 1998 to now, where we are sitting here, the demerit point system has always been part of the legislation, always. But it has never been enacted because of some of the, the problems that are experienced with AARTO. And then the next point, and I think the most important point, how did this curb the fatalities on our roads? Because I think, the department is very vocal in saying, but by trying to enforce discipline in motorists, it will then automatically curb the road deaths and will make sure that people drive better. I think if you want to accomplish that, firstly, education, but right from the start with our kids. And then secondly, you need more visible policing. That is the only way we will be able to curb whatever offenses. If you think about it, it's only camera offenses, the lesser speeding fines that may not require visible policing or policing. But any other contraventions, whether it is small offenses or your bigger offenses, needs a body to catch you and to write you a ticket or catch you and arrest you. And without those competent bodies, nothing will happen. And then the whole corruption issue. If we do not address corruption, we will never achieve the objective of creating better motorists, because, in order to create better motorists, you need to enforce the law. And if we can't enforce the law because of impracticalities and the fact that you lack the resources to do it, it will never work. So there's so many problems that I think should first be addressed before and legislation like AARTO will be successful.
Thank you so much, Stefanie Fick from the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse. Of course, as we just heard, AARTO dealt a big blow as the ConCourt refuses to declare the AARTO Act unconstitutional, but no costs order was made against AARTO.